Hello, and welcome to this edition of People in Transition. I'm your host, Bob Gerst. I've been hiring, firing, and mentoring executives, frontline employees, interns, and job seekers in companies around the world through a host of transitions, some difficult, but most very good. I work with people in Hong Kong, India, Australia, and across the United States. What sets them apart? A lot, but there's more they have in common. And one of those commonalities is transition is a part of life. This experience has given me a bird's eye view on a variety of trends, economies, industry disruptors, and transitions that are big and small. It also brought me into contact with the thought leaders and decision makers you need to meet, the people who can make the difference that matters to you right now. Imagine knowing exactly what to do next and how to know it's time to make your big change. The insight track you're going to access during our future episodes is better than a crystal ball. It's the exact information you need to take that next step. Whether you're a new grad applying for your first professional job, someone looking to transition your work experience into a promotion, launching your own company, or maybe even starting to plan your retirement, you're in transition, and this series is for you. We all know transition can be scary, but it doesn't have to be. And it's even fun when you have VIP access to the future you want. Are you tired of the uncertainty of being passed up? We'll share with you the tools and skills that can take your dreams to the front of the line. So, if change is on your horizon, or maybe just the thought of change, you won't want to miss this discussion. It could be the exact edge you need to turn transition into an amazing opportunity. Good afternoon, Dana Dwinell. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode.
My pleasure, Bob.
Dana, you have had such an interesting and varied career working as a TV producer, productions of a comedy program, working in a manufacturing company as a marketing director, and most recently for a number of years as your own business as an owner and producer for D2 Communication. Dana, why don't you walk us through what each of those have been for you and what you've learned from each of those assignments?
I have to tell you that the funny thing was, somewhere in college, when I wasn't sure what I was going to do, I actually was leaning a little bit towards theater, but I could not handle rejection very well. And a woman comes up to me at a cocktail party and says, "You know what, Dana, you should be in television." And I went, "Oh, for heaven's sakes, I can't be on television." And she said, No, I didn't say on television. I've been in television. And it opened up the whole world for me. I didn't even know there was such a thing. And she reminded me there was Mary Tyler Moore, and the rest was sort of history. I was very blessed to be able to find a job right after graduating from college in a TV station in Seattle. I literally grew up there. I was there for 13 years. And one of the things I learned besides the industry and making several huge mistakes, I learned one thing that is really true for a lot of people, which is your first job is just that. It's your first job. It's not going to be your last job. And in order for you to get the respect and the growth that you are going to need, you're going to have to leave. That never even entered my mind, of course, when I was young and impressionable, but that was so, so true. I couldn't get anybody to respect me after putting in all my time and energy and blood, sweat, and tears. So I ended up leaving that station, and I went to Philadelphia following one of my mentors who had taken a job there. And that, again, was in local television, and thoroughly enjoyed that. A little sidebar story on that one. That was the fourth largest market in the country at the time, and I was really sort of over my skis as far as being in big-time television. But there was an intern there who a lot of people didn't really enjoy very much, and I thought he had a lot of potential. He was very rough around the edges, and I eventually hired him, and he was my intern, and I promoted him. And then 3 years into my gig there in Philadelphia, they canceled my show, and I left to go to San Francisco for something else, but this young man was still in Philadelphia. And he called me and he said, "I'm going to take a job in New York City, and I was sad and thrilled at the same time. Long story short is this young man now is one of the executive producers on the Ellen DeGeneres show. So the kinds of people was amazing. Like I said, so I was kind of transitioned out of my job in Philadelphia and was hired in San Francisco. And that was a startup program, and it was really messy. And I decided that was not a good fit for me. And we came to a mutual understanding, and I went back to Seattle, where I had sent my husband. Then I couldn't get a job to save my life. And something happened that was very interesting there. I went a very long time trying to get back into television, and you can't ever go back. Couldn't get a job. And I finally took a part-time job in public affairs at a local TV station, logging PSAs, and eventually got to write a few of them. And then my father dies, and my mom says, come back to your hometown, and I'm going to give you the family home because I know your husband loves it. And I said, yes. Then the news department at that television station said, we would like to hire you as a news feature producer. That was probably one of the hardest decisions I ever made. I know I spent a lot of time crying. And first off, I said, I'm not a news producer. I don't know anything about the news. I'm an entertainer, not in journalism. And they said, but that's exactly what we want. We want someone with an eye for an audience, someone who can captivate people. But I had to say no. I said, I've committed to going back to my hometown. And so I come back to our hometown, and they don't do TV here. And I tried to work at a local station for a couple of years. And then I had to reinvent myself. And the whole idea from that book, which I'm sure everybody has listened or heard, which is What Color is Your Parachute? I spent a lot of time in that book and basically trying to figure out what was it about what I was doing? What's the granular part of that? What was it that I really liked? And it was the creative. It was making messages. It was being influential. And probably first and foremost, it was the kind of people that I was hanging with. I was not going to ever work in a law firm. I was never going to work in an accounting firm. I did actually end up working for a manufacturer, but that's another story. And so I ended up in advertising and marketing. And then you mentioned I worked for a manufacturer for a while. I went to a local advertising agency. And about 6 years into that, I decided, oh my goodness, I think I can control my life better if I own my own business. And that just showed how ill-prepared I was. Because it's a service industry, for heaven's sakes, and you're at the beck and call of what the client wants, and that's what you do. So I started my own business in 1998, D2 Communications. I think my niche was basically it's a semi-full service agency, but it's really like a marketing department when you can't afford to have your in-house marketing department. Very built around relationships and my experience at the manufacturers that I'd worked for and how in-house marketing people basically are interpreters. The business owner decide what to do with all the lingo that they hear.
Well, you've certainly seen transition. There's no question about that. And what an exciting life story that is so far, Dana. Dana, let's say that a friend just calls you and tells you that they've lost their job because their company is going out of business because of the COVID crisis. What will you coach your friend to do?
I've had a couple people call. I think one of the first things that I advise people to do is to evaluate yourself without any sort of job title and without any sort of industry, like I did when I was reevaluating my position when I moved to my hometown. Attach adjectives to yourself. This is what I do with clients. You're branding your business. Tell me the adjectives you want people to associate with your company. And I would say the same thing to my friend. What are the adjectives you want a potential employer to associate with you, and what are the ones that you don't want to have them associate with you? And subsequently, what's a good work environment for you, and what's the worst work environment going to be for you? Again, no kind of business or industry attached to it, just what's it feel like? What's it look like? And then you just sort of, it's like peeling an onion, and you kind of get down to what is it about the person that they have high value for, and then you take that insight and overlay it for, are you looking for positions in your community? Are you looking for, can you move? And then are there businesses or industries that you are particularly passionate or interested in working in?
Good coaching for them. You and I have talked before about recognizing your strengths that you have and uncovering those strengths that maybe you don't know quite as readily. And understanding that really helps a person through their transition process. Can you explain that just a little bit more?
I think that is the hardest thing for anyone to do. And I myself rely on outside input for that. Again, it's sort of like you're in the weeds. You're so close to it, you can't even see it. But when you start looking back at what you have accomplished, anybody, whether it's in your job or just in your personal life, there's going to be some consistent elements, some consistent feedback you've gotten, and you're going to see that. If you can't see it, it really is important to ask 4 or 5 people whose input that you very much trust and tell them your story. Maybe even write it out. I like it when people are able to communicate in the written word as well. And look for those high points and possibly the low points. But what are the consistencies? Are you a leader? Are you particularly technically proficient? I think I'm a relatively good communicator. Those sorts of things.
Sometimes you may have to even engage an executive coach, someone that can provide you that kind of feedback. Dana, how do you deal with the stress of being unemployed and looking for a job? What are some suggestions that you give to friends in dealing with that stress?
I don't know what it must be like now, but the couple times that I've been unemployed between positions, and usually for too long, it's terrifying. It's paralyzing, actually. And you kind of can go down the rabbit hole, recognizing that you have to, again, force yourself to just do one thing. I read a wonderful thing online, probably on Facebook, where it was a checklist of what to do every day. Do one thing that's constructive, do one thing that makes you happy, do one thing, there was like 7 of them. If I had that list in front of me, that's exactly what I would tell somebody. But also seek out people who support you. Don't wallow in any of that by yourself. There's no good that will come of that, being strong, silent. Ask for help and really seek out people who are supportive.
One of the things that I have learned during this stay-at-home time is to keep very present, to keep very today. I can't change what I did yesterday. I have no control over tomorrow, but I have control over what I do today. And that over these weeks and months, that seems to help me keep present. And it's probably true for that person looking for the job as well.
Well, yeah. And don't you think that may be a good thing that we're all learning during this time?
You bet. If there's going to be good out of adversity, that could be a Dana, what is an elevator pitch? How can you describe it to our listeners? And how would you suggest crafting a good one?
Everybody says you have to have a good elevator pitch, and nobody uses elevators anymore. I think, again, it's the Cliff Notes. It's the 30-second, 45-second, 1 minute at the most. This is me. This is what I do. This is what I'm passionate about. That kind of a thing. I think more than anything, if you're stuck in an elevator and you're giving a speech about yourself and your capabilities, I think enthusiasm is more important than anything. That's going to you have to distinguish yourself and you have to make yourself memorable. So if you're enthusiastic, you're a good communicator, I think the content is less important than the presentation.
I can't remember who it was, but I remember someone saying, if you're going to fail with positive energy and pizzazz, because most people really won't remember the failure. They'll remember that positive energy and excitement that you bring.
I agree. And I think the recipient of the elevator speech was standing there going, uh-oh, here it comes. But if it's entertaining and, like you said, above all positive, you'll be memorable.
Dana, how do you think someone should use LinkedIn or other social media tools during their transition?
I think you have the time. I think that that's the perfect thing to do, is to use those resources to cultivate a more productive network that you might not have had the opportunity or time to look into while you were busy. Of course, ideally you would have been doing this all along, and you'll be able to go to LinkedIn and then go to the people that are part of your network and turn to them for guidance or input or can I talk to you kind of a thing. But if you haven't, then this is the perfect time to do that. And I think LinkedIn probably is the best thing to do. Social media makes me very nervous when it comes to jobs and your professional face. So I would really play on LinkedIn.
Why does social media make you nervous? Explain that a little bit more.
Because I think people relax too much on social media. And I know businesses look at it and can't be all good.
If you have a picture of you dancing on a table with a lampshade on Facebook at an event, that probably is not going to help you in that interview with the law firm.
Yeah, the photos is one thing, but just how you respond to something. And now, of course, it's so polarized, and someone could get my dander up and I could just type off something and hit send and then go, oh my gosh, 2 years down the road, somebody is going to take great umbrage with what I just sent.
You are a very savvy businesswoman. And one of the things that people that are in transition looking at companies need to do well is to know something about the companies, the businesses that they're interviewing with. How do you suggest a person does some research on the job or the companies that they might be interested in?
First off, of course, you can go online and do a lot of research into, let's just say, Company A, and you're very interested in Company A and you want to learn a lot about it. You can learn some of the gory details online. I would find out who the board of directors is. And then I would see, do you know anybody who knows any of those people? What you're trying to drill down is, who can I contact who's going to give me the real information about this company? And how can I get that sort of input? Because you're going to have to ask some really pointed questions to get the real story.
Very good. I don't think I've ever had anyone suggest knowing something about the board of directors and using that as a line down through the company. Good idea. So what if you're interested in a career change to do something completely different? And you've done that, but you don't have any idea what that different is, what that looks like for you. What should you do?
Well, this again is where those 4 or 5 people who you really trust can help you, again, looking at what value you bring to whatever industry or business that it is. Okay, so somebody that I know who's probably going to be looking for a new job, I said, well, are you looking in the same industry? And they said, probably not. And I said, what about something in long-term care? That's a huge growth industry. And you have managed a lot of personnel, blah, 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 blah. And they went, oh, so you just need someone like you or myself or a friend or a mentor to just help you crack that egg open and think about how your skill sets and your personality translates to other businesses. What's growing? Your community is maybe different than somewhere else. So is there something in that particular, like where we live now, it's very agriculture. What could I do in the agriculture business?
Sometimes it takes someone from the outside to help connect those dots and lead you to something that you might not have thought of before. Yeah, very good.
And again, all those people, they know people and they know people. And that conversation is a huge networking opportunity as well. Those people will say, let me hook you up with Betty Joe, because Betty Joe's brother happens to work for so-and-so, and there you go.
Speaking of networking, how do you help someone who's not good at networking be better and more comfortable at it?
I guess just baby steps. You can't, it would be very sad to make somebody try to be really an extrovert when they're really not. So I'm not trying to make somebody be something that they're not, but they have to expand their comfort zone and step out a little bit. Like I said, one thing every day. You just have to do it. It's just probably the most important thing. For no other reason than you know that the job that may be perfect for you will never get posted, but you have to find the right person who says, I want them in my company.
Is transition management different if you're older or if you're a woman or if you're a minority? Are there differences that exist?
Definitely, I think that there are. I think every stage of your life, whether you're a woman, if this is your first time going into the job market, all of those things apply different pressures, different opportunities than somebody else. Every path is unique. So yes, I absolutely think they're different. And you have to be very, very honest with yourself, and not in a bad way, but in a really almost lighthearted, open way. There's nothing really wrong I think being really authentic and genuine and honest is okay. It's not like you're going to the shrink. It's a good thing. It's not a bad thing.
What coaching would you provide, Dana, if there was something bad in your past work history, discipline, or maybe even fired? How do you handle that with a potential employer?
First off, how would they find out about it?
Maybe they would find out about it through reference checking, or maybe they know someone who knows someone.
Well, depending on the severity of the issue, again, be totally transparent. Yes, that was not my shining moment, or again, own it. You just have to own it and not just try to shine it on or explain it away. Certainly not put the blame on anybody else. But yes, it happened. This is what I learned. It was an opportunity for me.
I think that owning it and being authentic is hugely important. You don't have to dwell on it, but it is what it is. This is what I learned, and I'm moving on. And I'm a better person because of that. I agree with you. Dana, if you could make 2 suggestions to help people make their resumes better, and you've seen a lot of them in your career, what would be the 2 suggestions that you would make?
My personal bias is that resumes I look at how the thing looks on the paper, on the sheet first. How does it look? And if it's visually interesting, that's a big positive, and then I'm more inclined to read more. And if it is arranged in intuitive, logical format, more importantly, I personally have a big bias with something that is heavily laden with lingo. So if you can say, this is what I accomplished without throwing in every industry buzzword in the world, I think that's a plus. But that's just me. I wouldn't make it single spaced, and I would not make it more than 2 pages. And hopefully those 2 pages makes it so compelling that they have to pick up the phone and call you or write you or do something. But make it look visually interesting on the page. Make your comments relevant to that particular company or that industry, and just don't throw a whole bunch of lingo and what I call white noise at them.
You spoke of earlier work environment and the importance of that work environment. If you're looking for a particular culture, let's say a more laid back one or an entrepreneurial one or that hard charging one or whatever it might be,
right?
How should you find out about what that company is and what their culture is all about? And then kind of a follow-up question to that is, let's say that you found out about it. Everything else about the job is just great, but the culture doesn't line up for you. What should you do?
I think the harder question is really find out the real true story of a company's culture. Some of that you can find out, again, but online research is what's the company history and who founded it, what were the values of the person, the president. That's just almost like doing detective work. That can be sort of fun. And then best if you can track down some people who are either there or who have been there and will give you the real story. The closer the word of mouth, the better. Once you think you've got the real story on the company, your second question about if everything aligns except the culture, what do you do about that? That's a tough one. And everybody's going to make their own decision. If you want to be successful, you're only going to be successful in a culture that appreciates you and what you bring to it. And not working in a culture that appreciates you does not tend to lead towards success.
I think it's one of those that after a while, no matter how much money, no matter what the title, no matter what the size of the office, if you go in and you can't be yourself, you can't be your true you, it's going to be real difficult.
It is going to be, you're absolutely right, Bob. And the other thing is you can say, well, this will be good for me. I need this. This will be good for me. It'll be good on my resume, knowing that you probably won't stay there. But you're not going to be an asset to that company because you're not invested in it. And I had an interview, and when I first moved back to my hometown, everybody in town said this would be the perfect fit for me. And I got to the third level of the interview. It was for a nonprofit. And I walked into the room, and then the little voice in your back of your head or wherever is talking to you the whole time. And my voice was screaming at me. And I finally turned to the interview panel and I said, you should not hire me. I am too big for this room. and they just about fell out of their chairs, but it was the right thing to do. I might have said it a little bit more graciously, but I'm friends with all of those people now, and it would have been a very bad choice for me.
That's being authentic.
So you have to listen. You have to listen to that little voice. It hardly ever steers you wrong.
I believe your career and probably life in general is curly and not straight line. What does that mean to you?
That's lovely. I think that's great. It's evolutionary and it's open format. I love that. That's curly rather than a straight line. Yes, it should be. It's good.
I've learned in these podcasts that people remember what they want to, but I always want to make certain that we kind of put an exclamation point at the end. Dana, if you have the opportunity to help them remember just 3 things about transition management, what are the 3 things that you'd like them to remember?
Be proactive and positive in your search. Think of ways in which you can distinguish yourself from others. That is attitude, words, how your resume looks, anything you can do to distinguish yourself from the rest. And lean on those 4 or 5 good friends and mentors to constantly be providing, I love the word authentic, feedback. You're going to need them.
Those gremlins in the middle of the night will be talking with you that you're not as good as you thought. Maybe they found me out. Maybe I'll never find a job again. All those things that they like to talk about. And those 4 or 5 friends are going to be critical to help you acknowledge that's a lie, that's not correct, and that you are someone of value and can add value in your next place.
And one other thing I just want to, those gremlins in the night don't come just when you're out of work. They come all the time and call you a fraud. They're just bad people. And so you just have to just stop that right now.
Dana, I've always learned so much from you. It's always a pleasure to have the opportunity to talk with you. I know that our listeners got a lot of value from this today. And thank you so much for spending time with us.
Thank you for asking, Bob. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast. We're working in unprecedented times as the world responds to the recent COVID-19 crisis. The fact is that even those who are not in transition understand it could be right around the corner, next month or a year from now. The purpose of these episodes are to give listeners support and the critical tools to adjust with the winds, wherever they come. I'll continue to introduce you to guests who have successfully, perhaps gracefully or without too many battle scars, survived their own obstacle courses and can share useful information on how to steady your ship or your world in this uncertainty. If today's message was helpful to you, please share it on social media. If you have any questions or podcast ideas for future conversations, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I appreciate your time you're investing in sharing these important conversations with me, my guests, and others who are going through life transition. Transitions between jobs, life stages, new entrepreneurial ventures, or whatever life brings. Change is constant. The more prepared you are for it, the better and easier the change will occur. Thank you again. This is your host, Bob Gerst. See you at our next episode of People in Transition.